You know that feeling when everything just clicks? Your mind is sharp, your mood is steady, your body feels like it's firing on all cylinders. That's not luck, that's what your body is capable of every single day. Now, I've looked into a lot of fish oil supplements, and honestly, most of them are mystery-sourced, over-processed, blasted with heat, and packed with synthetic add-ins. But this one is different. Omega-3 Rejuvenate from Big Bold Health starts with wild Alaskan salmon and cod, sustainably caught from some of the cleanest waters on the planet, and then it's processed at low temperatures to preserve what actually matters. We're talking about real omega-3s, naturally occurring vitamins A and D, and pro-resolving mediators, or PRMs, that help your body balance its own immune response. What does that mean for you? Clearer thinking, more stable mood, and real nature-based support for your heart and immune system. No shortcuts, no synthetic nonsense. And it was developed by Dr. Jeffrey Bland, a true pioneer in the world of complementary health. If you want to feel the difference, go to bigboldhealth.com/Hoffman. That's bigboldhealth.com/Hoffman and use code Hoffman for 20% off site-wide. Once you feel it, you'll know. Welcome to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Roland Hoffman. A rather novel topic for today's podcast because, well, intelligent medicine, the best of high-tech medicine, the best of natural therapies, somewhat at the intersection of these two is the new revolutionary approach to addressing mental health with psychedelics. Now, psychedelics have the connotation of, Timothy Leary and, the Summer of Love and stuff that we did in the 60s and 70s, dropping acid, that whole thing. Yeah, I've been through it because, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. And it was something that was rife on college campuses when I was in my formative years. But there's a new approach, a more scientific and controlled approach to the use of some of these agents. And we're going to talk to a couple of agents, a couple of experts on that subject, Dr. Will Vanderveer and Keith Kurlander, who are co-authors of a book entitled Psychedelic Therapy, A Revolutionary Approach to Restoring Your Mental Health and Reclaiming Your Life. And this is particularly important. It's timely because the new republicanism is a far cry from Nancy Reagan, who famously said, just say no to drugs. This administration under President Trump and RFK Jr. Are emphatically saying yes to drugs because you likely saw that President Trump recently signed an executive order to quicken the review process for certain psychedelics like psilocybin and ibogaine, as well as widen access opportunities for mental health conditions. And it's famously been portrayed on shows like 60 Minutes, efforts to address PTSD among veterans by having them take certain psychedelics to overcome the experiences that may be holding them back. And so let's take a deep dive on that subject with today's experts. So Dr. Will and Keith, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
And by the way, just by way of introduction, Will Vanderveer is an MD, he's a psychiatrist, and he has co-founded the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, and he's trained countless licensed professionals in integrative psychiatry and psychedelic-assisted therapy. And he is also co-host with today's other guest of the Higher Practice podcast. Keith Kurlander is co-founder of the Integrative Psychiatry Institute and is also the co-author of Psychedelic Therapy, Revolutionary Approach to Restoring Your Mental Health and Reclaiming Your Life. So, gentlemen, it's a pleasure having you on Intelligent Medicine. Welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, so give us a little background on this. What got you interested in this field?
Well, I guess I'll start. Great to be here, Ron. Thanks for having us. I was practicing psychiatry and minding my own business, doing what good psychiatrists do, which is you follow the FDA approved approaches, prescribe medication, maybe you provide a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, maybe some other kinds of psychotherapies that are evidence based practices. And what I found very early on in my career is that the conventional tools were coming up short were for too many people. And it was quite devastating, actually. And I wasn't sure what to do about it. This was the early 2000s, so 25 years ago. And I went out and started learning about integrative medicine and, hormones and brain injuries and gut brain connection and nutrition and so on. And I was able to help more people with those approaches, integrative approaches, but there were still way too many people not getting well. And that's when I was approached by a physician friend of mine in town who asked me if I'd be willing to get involved in a MDMA assisted therapy clinical trial. And I was very skeptical. I had learned in medical school that MDMA is the stuff that people party with and it causes holes in the brain and
The so-called
so
love drug, I think it's sometimes referred to, right?
right, ecstasy, yes. He said, well, why don't you read this paper first before you make a decision? And like a good scientist, I read the paper and saw that more than 80% of the people who went through the prior study had no longer met criteria for PTSD at the 12-month follow-up. So that was incredibly shocking to me and notable because I had so many people under my care who were struggling and not getting well with complex conditions involving trauma. So it was really out of desperation and not having great tools to support many of the people I was working with that led me into this work.
So what does the research say about the success rate of, say, SSRI therapy, which is the standard of care for, anxiety, depression, many psychiatric disorders, maybe combined with some talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy? It's pretty disappointing, isn't it?
It is. The best study we have to go on is called the STAR-D study, which came out in the early 2000s. National Institutes of Health sponsored study, no industry sponsors, no pharmaceutical money in that study, 4,000 participants. And it was a naturalistic study that allowed the providers to start with an SSRI and then change the plan to a different medicine or add thyroid hormone, add lithium, so on. What we learned from that study is that about 1/3 of people will get a remission from traditional treatments, whether it's therapy or medication. And then when you go to Plan B, you get a little bit less benefit for the people who go into Plan B. By the time you get into step 4 of changing medications around, you're down to about 13% chances of getting a remission. So it's incredibly weak when you think about it. If you thought about any other, think about having an appendectomy, right? And they tell you, the first time we do this, you're going to have a 1/3 chance of good success. We wouldn't accept that.
Indeed. So what's the fundamental difference between the recreational use that was so popular, probably still is popular in some circles of these drugs, and the kind of approach that you advocate?
There's a few big differences. Back when these substances were used in even maybe larger populations in the 60s, there was a lot around that movement culturally. And so the recreational use then, which happened a lot of concerts and things like that, it was very uncontained and there wasn't a lot of safety involved. So there was some fallout from that and some stigma that got created that, you could have a bad trip. You might jump off a building. You might go psychotic and never come back. All these stigmas that got created. I'm not saying that they're all invalid. We have to look at each thing. But then now, fast forward to now, and we look at psychedelic therapy, not recreational use. Therapy has a very specific protocol. These substances are taken in a specific setting that is conducive to feeling safe and, really reducing the possibility of random things happening in the environment. Hopefully you're with a skilled therapist that's there to help you work through any of the material that comes up for you. These substances can evoke trauma from our history. Obviously, in a recreational setting, if you're feeling trauma and you don't even know what it is, that can be very scary, because it's scary to feel it anyways. And so hopefully with a skilled therapist, they can sort of spot what's going on, resource you properly. And then many of these substances are being studied where there's also medical support on site. And that also adds to safety. So it's a very different game we're talking about here with psychedelic therapy than recreational psychedelics. And it really makes it much more conducive to doing healing. And then, of course, there's just biological factors that promote healing from these medicines.
Right. It seems like a couple of things are going on. On the one hand, these medications or these substances may have short-term or long-term effects on neurotransmitters in the brain. They may kind of give the brain a reset or ultimately even change levels of neurotransmitters, much in the way that some conventional psychiatric drugs do, but maybe in a unique or different way. But also they offer the opportunity for a deeper, insightful intervention by a trained therapist to take you through the experience and maybe process some of your trauma or process some of your issues and help you reframe things.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for the latter, this isn't new. Medicine-assisted therapy was sort of attempted over time, like nitrous oxide has been used and different things to see, hey, is there a way we can, in a therapy container, help people get to their suppressed material and the things that are really causing them a lot of problems. And then, of course, there was psychedelic research, heavily in the 50s and 60s before they got shut down for around therapy. So that aspect of it, it's only going to happen well in a therapeutic container, right? The other component, and I'm going to actually let Will speak to this a little more. The other component and the biological component, in the right doses, the right amounts, would probably happen anywhere. But I'll let Will speak to that a little bit more.
Right. Well, as Keith was saying, in the last flurry of research over the last 20 years or so, we've learned a lot about the biology of how these substances impact the brain. And one of the most exciting aspects of it is the capacity to support the brain to remodel itself.
Mm-hmm.
So we know in chronic conditions, chronic PTSD, chronic depression, chronic anxiety, what we see in brain scans is diminished connections between neurons. So the neuroscience term is dendritic pruning. So there's pruning of the tree that connects one neuron to another. And what we see in, especially in rat models where you can't really do it with humans where you give them a drug and then you cut up their brain and see what it did. But in rats, we can see that the connectivity between neurons is enhanced with many of these compounds. So there's a sense that and this is a subjective statement. This is not really a research statement, but there's a sense that the healthy flourishing of connections in the brain is a restoration process of a brain that's been under a lot of stress for many decades.
It's almost as if the brain in people who have problematic thought patterns, it's a vicious cycle. There's a circuitry that kind of reinforces itself, and it's kind of like on a treadmill. And then you can sort of break that up and create, I think the buzzword is now neuroplasticity, which is the ability to establish new connections, maybe new habits of thought.
That's right. There's a researcher at UCSF who has taught for us. We're fond of his work. His name is Robin Carhart Harris, and he's shown that for example, under psilocybin, when you put that person on psilocybin in a functional MRI machine, you can see that the connectivity between different regions of the brain is vastly increased during the psilocybin experience. And this is associated with the experience people have of new thought connections, new pathways of considering your life, the ability to get outside of your framework and see the forest for the trees, to get out of those ruts that you're talking about. And then, of course, the integration is important to maintain what has been shown during the brief psychedelic experience.
Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors and give them an opportunity to share an important message with you.
Has your digestive health been striking out due to poor food choices, medications, stress, and other lifestyle issues? This season, hit a home run for your digestive health with Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics. Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics is a live probiotic encapsulated in small, easy-to-swallow capsules that delivers Dr. Ohhira's signature blend of pre, pro, and postbiotics. Dr. Ohhira's award-winning formula contains a prebiotic blend of fruits and vegetables, which are naturally fermented with 13 strains of live probiotic bacteria for a minimum of 3 years. The result? Dr. Ohhira's game-changing postbiotic metabolites, which are key to supporting long-term digestive, immune, and cognitive function. Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, an all-star formulation and the best probiotic on the market today for overall digestive health and wellness. Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, available at Sprouts, Natural Grocers, and other natural health retailers nationwide.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. They're what make intelligent medicine a continuing free resource to you. And now back to today's guest, Dr. Will Vanderveer and Keith Kurlander. So who is this for, and who is this not for? Or is it just something that, maybe people who feel okay want to undertake as kind of an enlightenment experience to self-improvement, personal optimization?
Well, there are models for personal optimization. So the state of Oregon has a model for personal optimization. It's the only state, well, that's not true. Colorado has an aspect of that too. But Oregon's passed a psilocybin services law. I think it was in 2020 or 2022. They've had, for a few years now, have had active service centers. And that is a personal development model. It's not a mental health treatment model. Should people go do that? I mean, that's up to you, obviously, and it's a very personal thing. There's also a large movement around ceremony with ayahuasca and some other medicines too, which is a very much spiritual personal development model. That's not a mental health treatment model. And it's good to know the difference, right? Because if you think you're going for one thing and you have a mental health condition, but you're going to a ceremony for your mental health condition and you end up feeling more traumatized, it's because maybe they didn't have the right structure for you. Or you weren't even screened properly, right? So, and then of course we have the mental health treatment model, which is it's not for everybody. Each medicine has different indications that are being researched. So specific medicines are good matches for specific indications. And then some medicines have different contraindications based on your particular things that you're presenting with. Whether that is, history of psychosis might be a contraindication, or maybe you have some cardiovascular disease that could potentially be a contraindication for certain medicine. So it just depends on the medicine. But so I would say it's not right for everyone. But some of these medicines are very, they're very medically safe. Some of them you need a little bit more attention to the medical safety, depending on which medicine we're talking about.
I think Aaron Rodgers was kind of a celebrity case of going on an ayahuasca journey, which led him to jump ship and play for the Jets. I'm not sure if that worked out too well professionally for him.
Yeah, that's a common effect of ayahuasca. It makes you want to play for the Jets.
Right. with
Right.
harmful consequences to your Achilles tendon.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but so this is I think that this is a very, very interesting new pathway. Now, what are the implications of the government's new stance on this? Are they opening up the floodgates to experimentation with this, or is this kind of a very narrow path to investigate?
Well, we're in a very unusual moment where we have a Republican administration that is way more embracing of this line of research than any administration we've ever seen. Uh, in fairness, there's also more research to hang your hat on. We have some compounds that have made it through the FDA process through phase 3 research, which is where you have to do many participants in your studies, and double-blind and placebo-controlled, and so on. But the moment is ripe for a federal approval. There was a meeting in the Oval Office a few weeks ago where several vouchers were given to companies developing these compounds. The company Compass Pathways is expected to complete their application in the next month or two for their psilocybin product, which would, if it's approved, would be the first psychedelic approval by the FDA. We also already have, you can go get treated with generic ketamine. It's off-label treatment for depression, highly effective. Or you could go get FDA-approved intranasal ketamine. It's called Spravato, S-ketamine, also indicated for depression, and already widely available. So,
Well, let's look at that instance. Let's look at that instance with the ketamine. Obviously, a potential drug of abuse. Was the Friends guy died, from ketamine overdose? What's his name? It escapes me. But
Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry died. A contributing factor was ketamine overdose and over reliance under unsupervised circumstances. But from what I understand, even when you get nasal ketamine, it's not like you can get it and you can have it in your medicine cabinet and take a snort whenever you like. Even when you use nasal ketamine, you have to go to a clinic, I think, and get supervised use.
Right. FDA rules dictate that Spravato, S-ketamine nasal spray, can only be administered inside of a clinic setting. So you're right. It can't be taken home.
Right. And then there's IV ketamine, intravenous ketamine.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct. My understanding that Matthew Perry was actually getting legitimate medical IV ketamine for depression. But he, as you pointed out, he also was obtaining it illegally. And I believe that there have recently been some convictions.
Yeah, his supplier was convicted and has gone to jail, I think, as a result of that. So, but there is a potential for abuse with some of these things, but most of these things are not per se addictive. They're not like opioids or benzodiazepines, right?
Right. The ketamine is really the outlier in regards to that. There is clearly a social ketamine problem in this country.
Yeah, people obtain it. Yeah.
Yeah. They obtain it and they develop tolerance to it. And then you get into using higher doses and then you get into problems. So that problem is real. We don't see that with other psychedelics that are being studied right now.
So ketamine is considered a dissociative medication, like something that's used in anesthesia. That's a dissociative anesthetic.
That's right.
It is even used in children in pediatric medicine in a very, very judicious and controlled fashion, so that you don't have to get intubated for general anesthesia, right?
That's right. It's also very useful in the combat theater, where a combat medic can carry vials of ketamine in his pocket and knock a guy out, put him on his shoulder and get him out of there because of what you just said. The respiratory depression is not a concern with ketamine. It's one of its unique advantages as an anesthetic.
Yeah, what happened with Matthew Perry is apparently he kind of was out of it and he drowned, and it wasn't the medication per se that stopped his heart or caused him to stop breathing. So there seems to be a real impetus for this from military medicine side, because there's a very big problem of PTSD and depression and suicide among veterans. Is some of this initiative coming from the VA side to enable servicemen and women to receive this type of therapy?
Absolutely. I mean, there's lots going on in the VA with studies. There's been MDMA studies in the VA. There's research now. Some of the new bills that have gone out are funding research in the VA with psychedelic therapy going into the future. So the VA is very, I think a large part of some of the support that's coming out of the Republican Party is around veterans to deal with the PTSD issue among veterans.
An administration that's aligned with the Pentagon and aligned with military preparedness,
right.
and aligned with veteran benefits and support.
Yeah, and that's why you see also some increased interest in the last year around ibogaine, which quite frankly has much less research behind it than a lot of the other medicines we're talking about right now. But there's some promise around traumatic brain injury in ibogaine, and so there's a lot of interest there to let's go do some research quickly and see what's going on here for veterans, because a lot, partly not everyone, but partly some of the PTSD among veterans is from TBIs, kind of complicating their presentation. So there's that factor also that's making it difficult.
Indeed. Okay, we put a lot on the table. There's mentioned a lot of psilocybin and MDMA and ketamine and ibogaine and all these different things. I want to break it down for our listening audience and talk a little bit about what the actual experience of taking some of these things is like in part 2. So our listeners know that we divide our podcast into 2 parts. In part 2, we'll talk about all the individual agents that are under research and what it's like to experience psychedelic therapy. That's our topic. And, for a more comprehensive look at it, the book Psychedelic Therapy, A Revolutionary Approach to Restoring Your Mental Health and Reclaiming Your Life, by today's guests, Dr. Will Vanderveer and Keith Kurlander. And you guys do a podcast, right?
Yes,
yeah, we have a podcast. It's been on a bit of a sabbatical for a while, but I think we have 70, 80 episodes in there or something.
And so what each time you interview people who are prominent in this field and or people who've undergone the therapy, and you talk about individual drugs. And
the podcast is broader. So we have plenty of psychedelic therapy specific episodes in there, whether it's researchers or whatnot, clinicians, but it's much broader, where it's really about mental health treatment in general. So we have experts across the entire mental health field. And then Will and I also do some episodes ourselves.
You touch upon ketogenic diet. That's all the rage
That's
these days.
in there, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That's an entirely, it's a topic we've explored here on Intelligent Medicine, but
okay, yeah.
I'm sure that enters into an all of the above approach to addressing mental health conditions. So great stuff. All right, when we return, more on the subject of psychedelic therapy. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast.